My question is taken from the book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 28 to 29. I read, "For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh." 29. "But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God." Here, Bible talks about being a Jew by the circumcision of the heart. And if I'm circumcised in the heart, I'm saved. Can I call myself a Jew? And if I call myself a Jew, why can I observe Sabbath day?
Thank you very much for that question. A very good question at that. Three distinctions I want us to remember the Apostle Paul made in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. The Jews, the Gentiles, and the Church of God. The Jews, who are the Jews? The Jews are natural descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They are the nation of Israel. The Gentiles are any other individual that is not part of the natural descendants of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. The Church of God are people irrespective of their racial foundation, whether they are Jew or Gentile, all those who have become children of God. Now, when we read Romans chapter 2, because of my very belief in maintaining that distinction, when we read Romans chapter 2, we see something that is very, very clear. And this is why I enjoy, or I like talking about context. In Romans chapter 2, brother, where you told us to read, the Bible is talking about circumcision of the heart, obviously. It would mean a very straightforward response um if you call yourself a Jew upon believing Jesus Christ, upon having the circumcision of the heart. But the first question now that it comes to mind that I would love to ask is, let us remember that the people who that very commandment was given to were not people who had the circumcision of the heart. We are people who were natural descendants. First of all, these were people who were natural descendants. Romans chapter 3, verse 28 and 29. If we remember Galatians, in Galatians, the Apostle Paul talked about the law and the picture of how it was a distinction between Hagar, the bondwoman, and Sarah, the free woman. But without going into, contextually it relates to this, but without going into all that discourse, let us just stay on par. Um, I want to give two responses. The first response I want to give is because I am one who would call himself a dispensationalist. And because I am one who believes that verse 28 and verse 29 is referring to not, is going beyond one who is a physical Jew to who is a physical Jew that trusts Jesus Christ, and not just one who is a Gentile that eventually becomes a saved person. Because as a result of my inclination, biblical inclination, I am yet to see a verse from scripture that calls a Gentile who trusts Jesus Christ a Jew. The Apostle Paul, from verse 17 down to verse 29, which is one context, is talking about the Jews. And he's saying, because you are a circumcision, what profit do you benefit? If somebody who is a Gentile keeps the law, is he not seen as, is he not counted as one who is in circumcision? Then the Apostle Paul goes further to tell those Jews, or to tell those physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that one who is a true Jew is not just one who is outward of that, but one who has actually trusted Christ and had the circumcision of heart. And to prove to the degree of what I'm saying, let us remember that the Apostle Paul cannot be talking about something different in some verses and automatically change. We will see a shift in his weddings. And let us read verse 28, 29, and we go to the next chapter and see what the Apostle Paul is talking about. For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in flesh, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. Notice that here he says not, he says, and not in the letter, a reference to those physical people. But he is now trying to tell them that it goes even beyond the commandment. Now, how do we know that these Jews were literal descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Chapter 3, verse 1, let us read. What advantage, Romans chapter 3, verse 1, what advantage then hath the Jew, or what profit is there of circumcision? Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of God. You see, the usage of Jew in chapter 3 is actually referring to natural, national descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The usage of Jew in chapter 3 is not referring to a Gentile who trusted Christ and had the circumcision of the heart, and by that automatically became a Jew. Otherwise, the Apostle Paul is not going to make the distinction he made in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, that one should give no offense, that we should take heed so that we will give no offense to the Jew or the Gentile or the church of God. And so the way I interpret this verse, and in fact, I'll just stay on context and not give the hypothetical explanation. I'll stay on context and maintain that this verse is referring to an actual natural Jew. But Paul is going beyond that to tell him that your natural circumcision, your fleshly circumcision, is not actually what makes you a Jew, even before God. That the very thing that makes you a Jew is your belief in Jesus Christ, is that circumcision of heart. Paul is saying now it is not the circumcision of the flesh that matters anymore, it is the circumcision of the heart. And how do we know that Paul was referring to natural Jews? Because in the very next chapter, when he spoke of Jews, he was not referring to a Gentile who trusted Christ, or someone who was not Jewish who eventually became a child of God. He still maintained his usage of Jew for people who were natural descendants of the nation of Israel. Yes, if the Bible calls us children of Abraham, but the Bible is very specific not to use Jew. Neither does the Bible in any place call a Jew who has not believed in Jesus Christ a Gentile. The Bible doesn't do that. The Bible was clear enough to maintain Jew, Gentile, and the church of God. And to respond to the question, this verse does not, to respond to your question then, this verse in no way tells a person that is a Gentile or is a Nigerian that has trusted Christ that he is now a Jew. Obviously, I know well-meaning persons who believe, who have a different theological belief, like the replacement theology and covenant theology, who believe that they are now Jews because they have believed in Jesus Christ. But I would just rather stick with the verses and the structure that they apply and interpret this passage as saying that this Jew, Paul is going beyond the fleshly or the natural birth Jew, and he's saying what makes you an actual Jew is your belief in Jesus Christ. And in the next chapter, he uses Jew to explain that. So I would stop there. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I think we'll leave it at that, where you just explain. There's no need to go too much into it. So I think Pa James has a question that he wants to ask. Let's hear from Pa James. You can.
Before I will ask my question, I just want to thank God for the love of my brother Prosper invited me to this very meeting. In this meeting, I was able to gain many things where our brother teach about uh, the Sabbath. And my question is this: in as much as we are not under the law, are we free to choose any day of our own to worship God apart from Sunday service? Because we are not under law, all days are free.
All right. Thank you very much for the question. The simple answer, and I had that written down. I was waiting for us to get to the point, but since we are going ahead very quickly, the simple answer is yes. Yes, yes, and yes. There is no command in there is no command in any place that says we must not fellowship, or our fellowship is limited to a certain day. Now, I would use the word fellowship as opposed to worship, because worship is the believer's entire heart response towards God. In my house, I worship. In my school, I worship God. In my room, I worship God. In the church, yes, I worship God. But in the church, I basically fellowship with like-minded believers and I get exalted from God's word. However, are we permitted to fellowship on any and every single day, or any day that the believer chooses to fellowship with? Yes. If all of us here decide that henceforth we'll be fellowshipping on Friday, we fellowship on Friday. If all of us here decides that henceforth we'll be fellowshipping on Saturday, we fellowship on Saturday. And before I go into showing you Bible verses with regards to that, you wanted to say
Yeah, I
something?
just wanted to add this to it, so because we don't have much time again, I
Okay,
wanted
sir.
to add this to it that who, because now we are saying that, and we see that Christians does not fellowship or worship God
Yes,
on Saturday. So we want to find out from all the explanation you give,
yes,
to add to what Pastor James has said.
yes.
Who then change the Sabbath? Who change it?
Thank you very
Okay.
much, brother. Thank you very much. And as I go to give Bible verses to answer his question, I would want to answer your question. I would answer the question historically, and at the same time, I'm going to answer the question biblically. Who then changed the Sabbath? The Sabbath has not been changed. The Sabbath as a day, the seventh day, is not changed, has not been changed. However, when we go on soul winning, when we go on evangelism, we meet Seventh-day Adventists who quote the statements of Catholics when the Catholics say that they are the ones that change the day of fellowship from Saturday to Sunday. Now, when the Sabbatarians or the Seventh-day Adventists quote that, that would be a big bullet that would hit us. The Catholic Church said they were the ones that changed it from Saturday to Sunday. Wow. And that is what the Sabbath like to use every time. But let me bring this to our remembrance. Then I'm going to read a lot of historical writings of persons who were in existence even before the Catholic Church was established, or before the very first Pope came into being. This is what I want to first of all say. The Catholics have said many things, but the Seventh-day Adventists and the Sabbatarians refuse to believe that. The Catholics say that they are the one true church. The Seventh-day Adventists do not believe that. The Catholics say that anybody who is not part of their church is not part of God's family. The Seventh-day Adventists do not believe that. The Catholics say that the Pope is the physical representation of Christ on earth. The Seventh-day Adventists or the Sabbatarians do not believe that. So the question is, why is it that it is on this matter when they say, now all those things that they have said are all wrong. We do not believe anyone to be true. But why is it that when they have now said that they changed the day of Christian worship of Christian fellowship from Saturday to Sunday, why are these Seventh-day Adventists, why are they holding strong to that? Well, the simple truth is they are holding firm to that because that is the only thing that they can use to support their teaching. That is the only way, or the only thing that the only way out to support their teaching, to hold their teaching right. The Catholics say that, so the Sabbatarians, in addition to that, will say those of us who fellowship on Sunday are worshiping the sun god. They forget that those people who worship on Saturday, we can also use that same reasoning and say they worship the god of Saturn, because Saturday is named after Saturn and Saturn is a god. You see, the point is this, that the Seventh-day Adventists and the Sabbatarians pick what is beneficial to them, just the same way that they have picked when the Catholic erroneously have said they change the day of Christian fellowship from Saturday to Sunday. Now I want to read some historical evidences to each and every one of us to hear. I want us to hear this. This was before there was any first pope. I want you all to listen.
See you on the final episode. Thank you.